Dizzy Gillespie, Ella Fitzgerald, the Rolling Stones, the Beach Boys, and the boss, Bruce Springsteen. Many of the legends who played blues, jazz, or rock and roll have jammed at Asbury Park. But one fateful July 4th in 1970, almost every one of this shore town's music venues were damaged, some burned to the ground, like in Newark, in a powder keg of racial tensions that exploded in a riot, leaving Asbury Park literally in ashes. Now, that town is making a comeback. But is the music alive and well? And has the town healed its racial divide? Those questions are explored in the new documentary titled Asbury Park, Riot, Redemption, Rock and Roll. Here's a clip.
Asbury Park, it was like Disneyland.
It's this exotic feast for the eyes and ears.
You just floated a foot off the ground all day long, lifted by this great music.
There was a certain moment in time when something happened here that wasn't happening anyplace else. That mattered.
Asbury Park's music history goes way back.
We'd see all the top blues guys, B.B. King, Hooker, Lightning Hopkins.
There was an education to be had.
Because you could cut your teeth and you could try new ideas.
This was the beginning of something important.
The Jersey sound, whether it be Southside Johnny or Bruce Springsteen, that Jersey sound is distinctively and uniquely Jersey.
And joining me now is the director of Asbury Park, Riot, Redemption, Rock and Roll, a friend of mine for a long time, Tom Jones. Tom, it's so nice to hear you.
Sure.
Have you here with us to talk about all of this. I'm going to preface this by saying I'm a Jersey Shore guy. Grew up Point Pleasant Beach, Maniloki, a teenager in the 60s. Asbury Park was our Mecca. It was our destination where we went. I went to Convention Hall there and I saw all those bands, the Beach Boys and the Four Tops. The Rolling Stones used to show up, the great theaters there.
Great memories, and you were there for the best of it.
Yeah,
it was fantastic.
I really was. Elaborate a little bit on what we've just seen. I'm going to get to you in a minute as to why you want to do the documentary. But let's set the stage for it first and talk a little bit about, following up on what the folks just said in the clip, what was Asbury Park?
It was a real aspiration destination. You know, presidents used to come to Jersey Shore for their summer vacation, 7 presidents.
7 Presidents Park and Long Branch, right?
And Long Branch was a spot. And Ocean Grove was a Methodist encampment. And the fellow who founded Asbury Park, James Bradley, he wanted a buffer between Ocean Grove and Long Branch. He didn't want any of Long Branch to kind of eke over. And he bought all the sand in between. And he set up Asbury Park, and he spent all his money on that, so he needed some sort of a revenue source, and he chose music. Yeah. So from the very earliest days, Asbury was a music mecca. John Philip Sousa's band leader, Arthur Prine, set up the bandstand on the Fifth Street Arcade. So from the absolute very first days, Asbury Park, music was its thing.
We've set the stage for what it was like. What then drew you as a filmmaker to want to tell this story in a documentary?
Well, when I was in high school, it was post-riot, so it was really on its way down. And my summer job was I was the Pepsi guy. I used to deliver Pepsi up and down the boardwalk and all over Jersey, and I'd walk around thinking...
And my summer job was I was the beer truck guy. I used to
go.
deliver beer on all the spots along the boardwalks.
So Mrs. J's and New York Lounge, and you and I were in the same spot.
Worked all of them.
Yeah. And you walk around and say, how can this be? It's an hour from New York, and it's really on its way down. So I've always had this deep love of the town. And flash forward a lifetime, and we had Gibson Guitar as a client, and the chairman of Gibson Guitar got a picture of Bruce playing a Gibson. And he's obviously famous for playing a Fender.
Right.
With a little handwritten note saying, wouldn't this be a great ad? You should call me. And it was Tom Potter's granddaughter who had a collection of pictures no one had seen in her house in Waco, Texas. And Tom Potter ran this place called the Upstage, which was a famous after-hours club. And we looked at the pictures, and I scanned them for her, and next time I was in Asbury Park, I went to where the club had been, and it was in the 3rd floor above a Tom McCann shoe store.
Yeah, I remember the Tom McCann shoe store.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
So it's still there.
Yeah.
And I talked to the guy. They were turning into condos, and we went up this endless flight of stairs, and it was still 1970. I mean, nothing had happened since the riot. And the stage was still there. The Dayglow paint was on the walls. It gouged into the men's room wall. It still said Steel Mill Rules, the name of Bruce's band at that time. So we didn't touch a thing, and we did a shoot. And that's what really got me into the story. But I just think it's a great place to tell a story. It's a metaphor for a lot of other things. Most importantly for us is that music is a connector. Yeah. It's a town split right down the middle by railroad tracks.
Let's talk about that. Talk about then that eruption that took place in 1970, how it happened and the consequences.
Well, in the film, we're proud that we talk to musicians, not people who write about music. We talk to people who were in the riots, not people who covered the riots. And to a person, they can't really tell you why. They can't put their finger on why it happened. It's just the pot just boiled over. Boom Carter, who was one of Bruce's early drummers, he lived right next door to Nicky Adio. And that's a West Side story, because Boom's father was the great photographer of the West Side. And Nicky's family, lived right next door, and they both became great musicians. And both of them will say they feel it was outside agitators came down. But the elements were there.
Because Newark had erupted in riots before that.
Not too long before.
Yeah, a year or two before that.
And they talk about, guys coming down from Newark, and who knows. But it was ripe for that sort of a problem. Now, the West Side had a great culture and was a great music destination unto itself, R&B and blues.
Oh, yeah.
It was the stop on the way between Philly and New York.
Big Bill's.
Big Bill's bar. Cuba's, the Orchid Lounge.
I was in some of those places. But what's interesting is with this literal and figurative explosion, so much of the damage happened on the West Side.
That's right.
What was it then that started the resurrection of Asbury Park?
I think, first of all, it sank to an almost indescribable level.
Yeah.
And things became very affordable. And
the high school had to be taken over by the state.
By the state.
A jewel in the crown of schools in New Jersey had to be taken over.
And the physical plant's still so impressive. And the stadium, it's like a little bit of the 20s.
Oh, it's great.
But I think things got down to a level, and to a large degree, the LGBTQ community bought it back.
Right.
Real estate became very, very affordable. The bones of those great houses were still there.
People bought them, moved in.
Bought them for a song.
Wonderful restaurants got started.
And then restaurants started, and then businesses started. And it's a very organic development. And the great thing about Asbury Park is I think it can come back better than it ever was. It was a great place for some people. For everybody on the other side of the tracks, not so much so. Now it can come back and everyone can come up at the same time. And there's a real conscious thought process going on behind that now.
There's a great facility that they have there called Lake House.
Oh, fantastic.
And it was fascinating what they've done. Describe what they're doing there.
Well, it's so great on a number of fronts. First of all, it's a world-class recording facility. It's got a very specific sound. The guy who started, John Liedersdorf, he loves that analog sound. So he went out and found mixing boards. And if you want to record that sound, that's the place to go anywhere in the world. So on a professional level, it's fantastic. And maybe the best thing is John and Albie, his right hand, are completely devoted to the community. And they're running our outreach programs into the schools and the Boys and Girls Clubs. They're bringing music to kids that otherwise wouldn't get it. So the film festival funds that, and the proceeds of our movie go to fund that. So we're trying to make it a virtuous circle.
Tom, it's always good to see you. I haven't seen you in too long. Glad we were able to reconnect here. Just a wonderful job putting this together, and I think people are going to thoroughly enjoy it.
Thank you so much.
I look forward to it. Very well.